Hi everyone. So first, I would like to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and work with the Springfield Emergency Department. It's been really interesting to see the survey and the focus group come together and analyze the data to see what we can learn. So first, I'm going to talk with you about the general overview of the survey data and then some specific questions you wanted to know there. And then I'm also going to talk about the focus group data, and lastly, I'll talk about my recommendations for the future. So, positions of the survey respondents were broken down between technicians, secretaries, physicians, and nurses. The majority, or 40% of the respondents, were nurses. The minority, or 8% of respondents, were secretaries, which that's to be expected just because of the general distribution. Gender of respondents, 67% of respondents were female, 33% of respondents were male. Age groups of respondents, the age range from 31 to 40 years old had the most respondents at 34%. The age range from 51 to 72 years old had the least respondents at 9%. Participation in training, 31% of respondents attended training, and 69% of respondents did not attend training. Communication regarding patient care. So this was one of the first questions that was non-demographic on the survey. 36%, or the majority, were neutral on this question. 3%, or the minority, strongly agreed. And then what's interesting here is if you look at just general agreement or disagreement, more people disagree that there is efficient communication regarding patient care than those who agreed. You're looking at 43% versus 21%. So this is a potential area of improvement for the emergency department. Supporting one another. The majority, 33%, were neutral on this question. The minority, 6%, strongly agreed. So there's this contrast there. But if you look at the overall agreement and disagreement, 32% either agreed or strongly disagreed, and 35% either disagreed or strongly disagreed. So overall, big picture, there's not as much contrast there as you would think. So this is something that the emergency department is doing well. Respecting one another. The majority, 30%, were neutral on this question, and the minority, 9%, strongly agreed. The difference here overall is not very large, 34% versus 36%, if you look at general agreement and disagreement. So this is something that the emergency department is doing well. Communication between staff and patients. This is an area which could use improvement because the majority, 46%, were neutral on this question, and the minority, 2%, believe that communication is very good between staff and patients. So this is something that y'all might want to consider working on. Job satisfaction. This is another area where the emergency department is doing well. The majority, 36%, were strongly satisfied, and the minority, 7%, were strongly dissatisfied with their jobs. Having a friendly demeanor was another question on the survey. The majority, 55%, claimed it's very important, and then the minority was actually split between two groups. One group said that it is somewhat important, and one group said that it is not important at all. So those are split between 4% for each group. But overall, big picture shows that the majority claim it's very important. So this is something the emergency department is doing well. So now let's talk about the type of communication. Respondents were asked whether they used email or face-to-face discussions, and 120 people said they use email, and 113 people said they use face-to-face discussions every day. So overall, the majority of respondents use these two methods on a daily basis. Physician training and communication regarding patient care. This is the part of the survey data where I looked specifically at how different physicians responded to different questions based on whether they attended training or not. So, more respondents who did not attend training agree there is efficient communication than those who did attend training in each position except secretaries. So, for example, here you can see 3 versus 20, 5 versus 6, 4 versus 7, and 2 versus 2. That shows you that more people who did not attend training think that there is efficient communication regarding patient care than those who did. Physician training and supporting one another. This question came out the same way, where more respondents who did not attend training agreed that people in the unit support each other than those who did attend the training. Again, you can see here, for example, 13 versus 25, 5 versus 14, 4 versus 7, and then 1 versus 2. Respect for one another. It's the exact same kind of theme. More people who did not attend training agree that people respect each other within this unit. 13 versus 30, 8 versus 9, you get the idea. Physician training and quality of communication between staff and patients. It's the same general trend. More people who did not attend training think that the communication between staff and patients is somewhat good. Position, gender, and email. This is a little bit more broken down. Female nurses were the ones who use email the most on a daily basis to receive work-related information, which you can see right here in the daily category. Position, gender, and face-to-face discussion. Female nurses were also the ones who used face-to-face discussion the most on a daily basis, which you can see here, there's 37 of them versus the rest of the positions. Training age groups and job satisfaction. The group with the most job satisfaction was the 31 to 40 year age range who did not attend training, which is right here. You can see the 24 there. The group with the least job satisfaction was split actually between the 20 to 30 year old group and the 31 to 40 group. So gender and position, I ran this analysis because I thought it would be interesting to see the details. The most female, sorry, I got that very backwards. The most females are nurses, is what I was trying to say. And then the most males are physicians, so you can see that here. But what's really interesting to me is that the number of male and female physicians was equal. So that's just probably a sign that more females are going into being physicians. So gender in training, overall more females attended training than males, as you can see here, 122 versus 67. That's also something to consider when you look at the different positions, is that there were not an equal number of survey respondents per position. So keep that in mind. Gender in a friendly demeanor, more females, 54%, rated having A friendly demeanor is very important to providing quality health care compared to their male counterparts. Male respondents only rated this at 46%. Very important. As you can see here, 46%, 54%. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the focus group. The key theme here was that there are underlying communication issues between nurses and doctors, which prevent them from working together as a fully functional team. The nurses mentioned many examples, but here are three that I kind of just pulled to prove the point. First of all, there's no standards for communication, especially when communication breakdowns occur. Second of all, nurses cannot respond to negative comments because they're often shut down before they get a chance to defend themselves. And lastly, newer doctors use computers more often instead of face-to-face discussion. One of the nurses mentioned that instead of just coming to ask her or them for something, that the doctor put it in the computer, which took even longer because the nurse had to go through the computer system and all of that stuff. So, as I was going through and trying to narrow down my recommendations from all of this data, the focus group really helped because the nurses had some ideas about ways to fix some of these problems. Because first you have to fix the small things before you can fix the overarching large problems. So here are my recommendations. First, find ways for doctors and nurses to have more face-to-face discussions so that they can practice the skills they learn in training. Some examples that the nurses mentioned including moving where the patient charts are placed, because it used to be where the doctors would basically just sit in a giant circle and do their thing, and the nurses could come in and out and ask questions and things like that. And then let both groups come together to create a set of standards for communication. I thought this was extremely important because you need some kind of standard framework for what we do in the case of a communication breakdown before you go on to communication training. This would be like giving someone the example worksheet to practice before you give them the test. And my third and final recommendation is to find ways to follow up on the progress of new communication initiatives. I think this is important because the nurses really seem to stress this, that we have all these great initiatives and we get a training and it's awesome, but then we get to later and we have no idea if we made any progress actually implementing these things. So this can be done in a number of ways. There's anonymous surveys, there's mixed position focus groups, there's also the possibility of a section in a newsletter, which is something that the nurses brought up. So they used to have a newsletter, and that's where they got a lot of their information because it was physically stapled to their paycheck. So those are some ideas. Those are my final recommendations. And I would like to thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to work with you. And I wish you the best of luck with your future in communication.